Hello, this is Wehavecookies 56 with yet another Minecraft Forge modding tutorial. We're finally going to do blocks, so there's quite a lot of things we're going to do, but first, of course, we just want to make a basic block. So what I'm going to do is copy the mod items file because it is going to be very similar. So I'll just make a new package for the block, and we will copy and paste that and call it mod blocks. So mod blocks will obviously be using blocks, so instead we're going to have public static block, and then I'm going to call it tutorial block. And of course we need to import block from net.minecraft.block. And of course I need to change that as well. And also we'll change this to block for now. I guess we should probably just make a class right now and change that to tutorial block. Right, so block needs some stuff in its constructor. And we don't want that, we want... And let's just get all this stuff fixed and I'll change that. So, that is... What on earth did I do that? Right. So, the block needs a material, which basically determines how the block behaves. So, if you set it to material ground, then it will be breakable. The quickest way to break it will be with a shovel. If you make it iron, then it's, you're going to need a pickaxe. But the other thing that it does is also change the footstep noise. So when you walk on a ground block, it's going to sound like it does when you walk on dirt and grass. And same with iron and glass, they all have their own footstep noises. There are a lot of different ones here. The things like, where is it? Circuits is for stuff like redstone and the repeaters and stuff, which are not, that are like easily breakable and are not fully solid. So we'll just make this material dot rock to make it like stone, and what I'll do is make a block tutorial block. And now just extend block, that one. And we need the constructor, so alt insert constructor, and we just want that. And I will add a new parameter here for the name, and we will do unlocalized name, which will just be name. And then also let's set the creative tab. So I believe we have that in, yeah. There's some other things that we can set here, such as the hardness and resistance. So the hardness is how easy it is to mine the block. So the harder it is, the longer it will take to break. We'll just set that to 10, which is pretty high. If we look at the blocks class, so if we go into the Minecraft source and go to, we don't want block, it's not in here, is it? Right, where's blocks? Ah, okay. Right, we want to go into here, and we have blocks. Now there's all the blocks, of course, from Minecraft here, and maybe it is in. Could have sworn it's in there rather than here. Right, let's go through all this. Aha, here it is. So, here are all of the blocks with their hardness and resistances. And we can also change the sound type if we wanted to. You can see that stone has a hardness of 1.5, and then grass has a slightly higher hardness than dirt, and also stone actually has a resistance of 10. So resistance is basically how strong it is against explosions. So if we find obsidian, we can see that, here it is. It has a hardness of 50, which is why it takes so long to mine, and it has a resistance of 2000. And then, I don't know if bedrock, oh yeah, okay, so bedrock has a resistance of, what is that, 600,000, or is that 6 million? 6 million. Which obviously is ridiculous and will never actually get destroyed. But also, it has set block unbreakable. So, that is how you make it like bedrock, where you cannot mine it. So let's actually make it the same as obsidian, so that's going to be 50. So 10 is pretty hard actually, but not as hard as obsidian, of course. And then we want to set the resistance. You don't have to set it. If you don't set it, then it will just, be easily destroyed by explosions. But if we want to make it really resistant, then we can make it 1,000 or 2,000 if you want to make it like obsidian. I think there's a certain point where it just is unbreakable by explosions, but 1,000 is probably high enough. And then we might as well set the sound type. So let's make it sound like slime. That'd be fun. And that's pretty much it for the block class for now. Let's go back and actually make this work properly. So we'll rename that to register blocks. And I'm actually going to make a new method which will save us some time. I'll call it register block, and it's going to take a block. And basically what I'm going to do is put this in here, and then change that to block, and then the block, oh yeah, I guess I should probably put the name here. There we go. So that will register the block, but what we also need to do is actually register the item block, which is basically the item form of a block when it's in your inventory. So the block itself is the thing that's actually in the world, placed down. But the item block is the thing that can be stored in your inventory and other containers. So we need to register a item block. So we just want to do new item block, and then give it the block, and then do the same thing as we would to register the block or item. And that will just save us time, because now we can just call register block, and then we can do this, and we don't have to register. We don't have to register the item block as well every time. We can just use one line, which is a little less tedious. Let's actually register the render. So this is slightly different as well because we need a block in the register render, but this still needs an item. So what we're going to do is get the item. So we're going to say item equals item dot get item from block. So this will get the item block from the block, and then that is exactly the same. We don't have to change anything there. We just need this new line to get the item version of the block that we're registering. And then lastly, we need to actually call the pre-init and the register renders. So we need to go to client proxy for the register renders. Let's get that. And then we need to register, well, call the pre-init from mod blocks, and that's actually everything for making the block. Of course, we haven't actually set up the block to have a texture. That's the next thing. So I need to actually make a texture for this block. So what I'll do is just do it right now. We're going to use MS Paint because I don't want transparency, which means I can actually do this. And I want to do 16 by 16. And we'll just make it red or something. There we go. Don't need to have anything. So we want this in our tutorial mod. Source, main, resources, assets, tutorial mod, textures, blocks. And we'll just call this tutorial underscore block. And that is our lovely red texture that is now here. I do wonder if that will open. Oh, that's quite cool. They actually have an image here. Never even tried that. Right, so there's a couple of things we need. A bit more complicated than items because we need the JSON model, we need a block state file, and we need the item model as well for the block. So 3 JSON files, and it's pretty simple though. So let's make the block model first, because that is probably the most sensible way to do it. So tutorial underscore block dot JSON. In fact, I'll just make all the files first. So we're all going to have the same name. So we got the item and the block model in there, and then we'll have a block state file. Whoops, I didn't. What did I just do? Let's rename that. What? Did that just change? I've lost everything now. It did. No, don't do that. I should have just renamed the file and not done. Because you can do rename. Oh, that's weird. It doesn't come up with. Could have sworn it usually comes up with rename file, as well as. Oh, maybe that's only for classes. Could well be. That's an email. Yeah, there's only. Thanks, mass drop. Right. Right, oh my god, that just completely took me off track. Right, so our JSON files. So let's do the block first. So it's pretty much like the item model that we had, but we don't have anymore. Where we want a parent, so the parent is gonna be block cube underscore all, and then we want the texture. So the textures here, we're going to call it all, which means it will set the texture of the block as well as the particle effects when you hit it, and like when it gets broken, those effects, or when you walk over it as well, or sprint, all those effects. So we just want tutorial mod and then blocks, and then the name of the block, so tutorial block, and that is the model. I swear this used to have highlighting for JSON. Have I? Yeah, that's odd. Does it think it's not? See, that says it's JSON, and then that says it's... What the? Well, I guess it doesn't matter as long as it's a JSON file. Wonder if we can refresh that. Very strange. Well, I'm sure it will work fine. It doesn't matter that there's no highlighting as long as it's the right thing. And then the item model is even easier because we can simply just say that the parent is our yeah, it is block, isn't it? Our tutorial block. That's another one. I will turn that off in just a sec. And then what's the last thing? The JSON, the block state JSON. And the block state JSON is a little bit different to the usual stuff because we need to specify the variant. We only have one variant, so it's not particularly complicated, but we want to use the normal variant, which is the variant when it's just on the ground, basically, the normal one. And this is going to be tutorial mod, so we're just specifying the model, which is just tutorial underscore block. So that should be everything. We might want to actually do tutorial mod just to make sure that that works properly. And I'm going to start the game, and once it's loaded, be back. I just remembered that we didn't actually change this back to a sensible scale, so it's like impossible to see what's going on. So I'm just gonna change the scale of this back to a much smaller scale so it doesn't cover everything. And also I forgot to change this to use the our new block class. So we want our material and then the name, which why did I type string? Tutorial underscore block. And there we go. Now this should actually work. So here we are in the game with the block right here that is just this red plain block. We didn't actually localize the name, but that is fine. And it makes the slime noise. And we made it a rock, so let's try and break it. So as you can see, it's not really breaking because we made it as strong as obsidian. But if we change, if we get a better tool, now we can actually break it. At least in a timely fashion. So the block's working fine. Doesn't do anything right now, it's just a pretty strong block. Let's just try some TNT on it. So let's see, is it possible? Stupid tall grass in the way. Is this breakable? I don't know. Doesn't seem like it. So even with half the resistance of obsidian, it's still strong enough to withstand explosions. So I'm sure the resistance of obsidian is that high just to make sure it absolutely never does break. And it's probably the same reason for bedrock having such a ridiculously high thing, because bedrock should never be broken. So that's nice and strong. But as I said, the block doesn't really do much. So let's actually get on to doing something like that. So now let's actually add some extra functionality to our block. So just like the items, there's a bunch of methods we have from the block class that we can override, which we're going to do now. So Control O to get to this menu, and we can look through it here. So there's a lot of deprecated functions here, which actually don't, a lot of these still work and don't have an alternative, so like it's still a good idea to use, such as getting the light value. That still works, and the same with like the bounding boxes here, which is rather annoying that they're deprecated right now. Hopefully we'll actually get a proper replacement for them, but at least for now we'll have to stick. We can still use them, so whatever. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is use set light level. So this is how you make a block that uses that it acts like glowstone or a torch, those sort of things. They give off light. So we actually alright, it's Control U. We can see that it simply does 15 times that. Which actually isn't that helpful, is it? But let's just set this to 1 for now. And it needs to return what? This isn't right. No. Okay, so that's another thing we can do. That was stupid. Setting the light level. We can do that like this. We don't want to override that. That's me being silly. So let's just set this to 1 for now. And we can make it emit light. Which is obviously kind of helpful, but let's actually use something that we want to override rather than something like that. So, for example, on block destroyed by player. So we can do something when this block is destroyed by the player, as it's called. So we get the world, the position, and the state, which is pretty helpful. We don't get the player, which is a little weird that we don't, but there is another method that is similar to this that we can get the player in, but you know, we can do all sorts of things. So let's say when it's destroyed by a player, we want it to replace the block with something. So let's say, I don't know, TNT. And yeah, we want to import that. And we'll just get its default state. So when we destroy the block, it's going to place TNT where we destroyed it. And just to make this less annoying, I'll put that to 1. So that's only when it's destroyed by the player, though. So we can also do on block destroyed by explosion. So we can do something when it explodes. So let's say we want to, I mean, we don't have to set a block, that's just me using an example. We can spawn an entity if we wanted to, and yeah, why not? Let's spawn an entity. So we don't want to use some of these ones. We want things like, well, we could spawn an entity item, like a dropped item, but there's a better way to do that. So, but you never know, you might want to do it this way. Let's spawn a blaze. Why not? And it just takes the world, which we have, so that's good. Although we may want to. Is there a different? No. Okay. We can check. Yeah, it's the only constructor. Okay. So we can, you know, we can spawn a blaze when we destroy it with an explosion. Why not? Let's actually make it not so strong. In fact, I just won't set a resistance. Actually, I'll just leave it on 1. Why not? And let's get another thing. So we have on block added. So this is when it's placed in the world. So we could do something when it's placed. You probably don't want to be doing all these things, of course, at the same time. But of course, these are all examples, and it's just ridiculous. So what could we do? Create an explosion? Why not? Right. So the entity is null, and the position is here, so we can just get the coordinates from the block pos. The strength 5. Is smoking? Nah. I do recommend, if you want to use like some of these things, look into what they actually do. So we can see that there's all sorts of things going on here, and it's pretty complicated, but we have this method that is fine. So we can see that if it's smoking, then it spawns particles and stuff. Let's close up these. We don't need those anymore. In fact, let's close all these JSON files as well. Now I wonder if it's decided no. Very strange how it's doing that. I guess it's not too much of a problem though. So now when we place it, it's going to make an explosion. Then, when we destroy it with an explosion, it's going to spawn a blaze. If we destroy it, but if the player destroys it though, it will place TNT where it was. So, that's a bunch of different things that we can do. Now, there's also on block activated. So this is useful for anything that has an interface, basically. So when you right click the block, this method is called on block activated. So if you have, let's say, a crafting table, then on block activated would be where you make it so it opens the GUI. So we can actually do that. We could open a GUI. Of course, we don't have a custom one, so we can. All we can do is. Actually, no, let's not do it that way. So what I'm going to do here is check if the world is remote. If it's remote, then it's on the client. If it's not remote, then that's on the server. So this is called on both the client and the server, and we don't want to open the GUI on the server. If we do it like this though, we can open it on the server because this is handled using a GUI handler, which on the server will open the container, and on the client it will open the GUI. So that's something to note, but we're just going to do display GUI screen, new, what could we do? I mean, there's all sorts of things we have here. Some of these things probably aren't going to work too well, so let's just open up something like let's just open the inventory, why not? Sure. What does it need? The player. That's fine. We have the player. So now when we right click the block, it's going to open the inventory, which is a very silly thing, but that's what we're going to do. Right, so we've got even more things here. We have break block, which is just like a universal like break block thing. So this is when it's destroyed by an explosion, this is when it's by a player, but this is just when it's being broken by anything. We won't change that though, so. Other things we can do here is collidable. So if you set it to false, then you can walk through it. We won't do that though. Then we've got these tick things. So the random tick and the update ticks are pretty useful if you want something to happen either on a regular basis or randomly. So a use for a random tick is something like plants which grow. So they use the random ticks to basically determine when to grow, essentially. But an update tick is consistent, random tick is, well, random, funnily enough. And then there's random display tick, which is similar to the normal random tick, but, you know, it's used for if you want a block to have, like, to change its appearance randomly, let's say. You can also set the tick rate of the block. So we're not going to do that. Quantity drop, so you can set how many things it drops when you break it. Then get item drop, we can change what's actually dropped, which is pretty cool. And we even have fortune, so you can handle fortune. And we've got a random thing here as well. So that's pretty useful if you want to have like different drops, a random set of drops. You can, you know, use that. We can use this rand to say like next float, and then say like if, well, obviously we don't want just that. That's a bit silly. We can say like if rand.next float is greater than, I don't know, 0.5f or something, then return apple, else return diamond. You know, that's the sort of random thing we'd have. So I won't do that. I'm just gonna leave it like a simple thing here. We're just gonna say it'll drop an apple. Simple enough. And I guess we might as well set the quantity. Let's return again here. We can use a random here, so we could say like if we want a random amount to drop, then that's another thing we can do. So we'll just say 3. And then what else can we use here? So that's another thing we can do. Drop XP on block break. I mean, that kind of describes exactly what it is. That's the nice thing about this. Pretty much all the methods are named sensibly. Like, they say what they do just by the name. And if you don't know what they do, then you can press Control U and it will go to the original method. And most of the methods here have documentation, so you can see this says spawns the given amount of experience into the world as XP orb entities. So yeah, drops XP, like when you break coal and stuff, it gives you a little bit of XP. So we can do that. I mean, what do we want to do? We could say like, because this is a void, so we're not returning anything. We just, if we look in here, it spawns. It says, you know, while the amount is greater than 0. So if we were to say amount equals 5, and then we have our super method here, then we've now set the amount to 5, so it will drop 5 XP orbs. So that is quite a lot of things, but there are still way more things. We have on block placed, which is similar to on block added. If we look at the difference, we can see that in on block added we have the world, the position, and the state. But in on block place we have the world, the position, and we don't have the state, but we do have, although we can get the state from the position anyway, but we have which way it's facing and like where basically it was placed. So the coordinates of where you when you right click to place the block, the coordinates that you're looking at basically, and then the metadata of the block and the entity that placed it, which pretty much is always going to be players unless it's like an enderman playing down block. But I don't think any other entity will place it, but of course you never know. A mod could make it place a block, make an entity place a block, but we won't be using this. We've already kind of, I mean, we could do exactly what we did in here, there. It also returns a block state, which on block added is just a void, so it doesn't return anything. Yeah, we have that. And then let's get to, so on entity walk, so if you want something to happen when you walk on a block, so like with the slime block, when you walk on it, you bounce. So you can have something happen here. We could say like, I don't know. That's not gonna work actually. what could we do? Let's do walked on block. So we're just going to add a message to the chat that says we walked on the block. And then let's say on block clicked. So this is when you click the block rather than right clicking it, like left clicking it, but not actually, you know, breaking it or anything. Which is, I mean, what else could we do here? This block is so crazy right now. It's just doing everything. Let's say, well, let's get the state. So if you don't have a block state, but you have the position and the world, or even just an entity and the position, then you can get the block state. So you can see it, we can do world.get block state, and then give it the position, and then we can get the block state, which is pretty handy. And we can, you know, handle stuff with the block. But let's say, what do we want to do? What can we do here? You know what, let's no. Let's do something to the player. Like let's give an item to the player. So add item stack to inventory, new item stack, and then we're gonna say let's get the block state, get the block, and there we go. So when we click the block, we get given the block. Kind of stupid, but again, this is a tutorial. We're not going for a sensible thing here. Now on block harvested. Now that's a special method, because while this may seem like it's the same as when it's destroyed, it is actually when the block is destroyed using the tool that is effective, that, you know, the proper tool. So when you destroy a block with a pickaxe that is like stone, that's the proper tool, so it will trigger on block harvested. If you use your fist to break it, then it wouldn't. So depending on the material, that's gonna depend on what tool is used. But for example, if you're making a thing similar to an ore, so ores only drop their stuff if it's a pickaxe, otherwise, or like, you know, the right level of pickaxe, otherwise it just drops nothing, but it still breaks. So we can do something here as well if we use the right tool. I don't know what we would want to do here, but you know, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Lots of things. Why am I doing get? Let's do, what can we set? We don't want to do that. Drop items when dead. We can set fire. Yep, because that makes sense. And that's how many seconds, right? Yeah, 3 seconds. Fine. That's good. So what else have we got here? Is flammable. Don't think we need to. Do we need to override that? Probably actually. Oops. Yeah. So this is self-explanatory here. Is flammable. Basically checking whether you can set fire to the block and it will, you know, burn. So like wood is flammable but stone isn't. You know that. So let's say it's not. Of course we could make it, but I don't know what the default is. I think it might be. That's odd. Why? Okay. Well, whatever the default is. I'm sure if you actually look deep enough you could find that properly, but yeah. Right, what else can we do here? So there is a lot of things to do. Obviously I can't cover everything because there is so much, and the best thing to do is really, like, if you think about something, try searching for its name, because with this, with IntelliJ, you know, in the controller, just type and it will search. So when I want to search for, like, I don't know, on, let's say I was looking for on block placed or on destroyed or whatever, then we can search for it, and makes it a lot easier because there are so many things here. We're probably not going to ever want to override stuff from object, but you never know when you might want to. So I think that's enough for now. As I say, like, just if you if there's something here that I didn't cover, then go looking around. Either look through this list or go to the block class. So if you control click that, then it will go right to it, and you can look at the methods here. And they're most of them are described. As you can see, like here, it's not, but it's protected, so probably not going to use that anyway. And you can see that this is only deprecated stuff here doesn't have any explanation for it. Well, this does. And you can also see, whoa, Java, thank you. I'm not going to update. God, getting all the notifications today. There is a point where Forge starts. I think it's around. It's got to be, yeah. So you can see it actually says Forge start. And the Forge documentation for this stuff is a lot better than Mojang's stuff in the vanilla. So you can see there's like one line for most things here. But then in the Forge stuff we have the parameters, although, you know, it's, you don't need too much. But you can see, like here, the entity trying to use the ladder can be null. So that's obviously helpful information. And we can see that the light value goes from 0 and 15. So there is a lot of things that we can do here, and something I didn't do is get drops, I don't think, which is, rather than having just wait, so this is just an item that is dropped, just one thing, and then this is just how many of that item. Let's actually, so get drops. This uses a list of item stack, so we can have multiple drops, different items. So depending on what you need to do, if you only wanted to drop just one item that isn't the block itself, then probably just use this because it's easier, it's just simple. And then if you want to drop more than one of the same item, then use quantity dropped as well. But if you want to drop multiple different items, and then, you know, multiple ones of those items, or just one of each, then you'd want to use this, because then you can make a list. So let's say list item stack equals new, just make it an array list, and right, it actually needs a name, doesn't it? List or drops, yeah. And right, there we go. Is that the rock? I suppose that's items. What am I doing? Right, there we go. Could have sworn you don't need to specify both of those. Anyway, and then we can add to this list. So we can be like new item stack items dot iron ingot. That's the first thing that comes up, and you can add more, and then return drops. But we are not going to do that. You don't need to do that. But if you do need to have more than one, then we can do that. And there are other things we can do to blocks, but I'm gonna leave that for, well, the next tutorial I'm going to do is events, and events are incredibly powerful. In fact, like after actually being able to make like, the basic mod with like a basic item and block, I think one of the most important things to learn early on is how events work, because they can do so many things that a lot of like, whenever you're thinking, oh, how can I do this? Most of the time, the answer is events. So it's incredibly helpful to know how to actually use them, because there are so many things you can do. If you, for example, I mean, I should actually, explain this in the events video, I guess, but if you need to, so we've been doing stuff to our own items and blocks. If we want to do something to vanilla items and blocks, we can't modify the item file, because then that would make it incompatible, and also Forge doesn't allow you to do that anyway, although you could do it if you made a core mod, although core mods are bad, so don't do that, because events pretty much have you covered there. So anyway, let's launch the game so we can actually see some of the effects of what we've done. Right, now we've actually got the game open. Let's see. We didn't actually localize that. Let's quickly do that. So let's go into our language file. Let's add a new comment. Blocks tile dot tutorial underscore block dot name. Super simple. Just use tile instead of item, and don't do that. And it's pretty much the same. Anyway, so as you can see, we place it, it goes boom. When we break it, it becomes TNT. When we walk on the block, we get walked on block. What else did we do? Oh, I guess we're in creative, so it's not going to do the... When we right click it, it opens the inventory. But we still place. Now that's actually... it's possible to... well, I've lost where we are. So, what we should do is return true here, which basically means that we've returned that we've activated it. Although actually what I'm going to do is say return false if we're not on the client, which basically means that when we right click it, you see that we place a block when we right click it, even though we've activated it. So if we return true, then it knows that we've activated it, so it doesn't place the block. So if we go into you can see we click it and we get given the block as we had before. If we break it, then we get set on fire, and you can see that it dropped an apple. That's 6 apples there. 7 even. So it's a pretty crazy block. Definitely not something you'd usually have in a mod. And that just killed me. So, not only do we have an item that places diamond blocks when we right click blocks, but we also have this insane block that is just stupid. And that's like, you know, the fun thing about modding is that you can do stupid things and you can also do cool things. And even if you do something wrong and it breaks things, a lot of the time that like brokenness can be great. So I think that's everything I want to cover on blocks. There are more things you can do with blocks. There are a lot. What I didn't cover is something like a tile entity, which I think I'll probably do a tutorial on it at some point. But it definitely should not be in the same tutorial as blocks, because tile entities are much more advanced and are basically, as they, you know, they are tile entities, so they are blocks which are entities, so they have a lot of properties that entities have. So, one of the major things that you can do is store data in a tile entity, which is helpful for making something like a chest, which stores the items that are stored in it as MBT. Now, a convenient thing that Forge now has is the capability system, which makes storing data in tile entities and item stacks a whole lot easier. But the tile entities just generally are pretty advanced and definitely deserve a separate tutorial because there's a lot you can do with them. Another thing I didn't cover is multi-texture blocks, and also blocks that when you place rotate. So I may do another tutorial at another time covering those things. When you do rotate them, basically there's a property system with the block states that you can have different things. So for example, grass has a snowy state. So when it is, you can see that we're looking at it and it says snowy is false. If it's false, then it doesn't look like the snowy, like the white texture. But if it's true, then it does. And then we can also see that the tall grass has a type. And what else have we got here that we can look at? The double plant here has a facing, has the half of the plant that it is, so this is the upper half, and it also has a variant which is double grass, which I guess is because there's different variants of that grass. I don't know. I assume if we break it, oh right, no. Well, and I just screenshot it, that's cool, isn't it? So the there's more to cover, but I think this tutorial is long enough as it is, and it does cover a lot of the basics, and at least will allow you to make a block that is functional. Of course, if you can figure out how to do any stuff that isn't covered in this tutorial, then go ahead. The multi-texture stuff involves using having the facing set and have the in the block state JSON the variants. You can have each like way it's facing as variants, so you can have like north, south, east, west, up and down. and you can change, not only can you change the texture, but also you can like rotate the model. You can, you know, do all the sort of stuff that you may want to do to modify how it looks depending on which way it's facing. Another thing I should mention actually before we end is that the 3D models work exactly the same way as they do for items with the OBJ models. So it's exactly the same setup. The only difference is that we're using a block instead of an item. So we get an item block, not mod items, mod blocks, tutorial block, and that will register the model the same way as the item. And if we have our model set up, then it would have a 3D model. So there's no real reason to make another tutorial for block models because it's exactly the same. So I think that's everything. So thank you for watching and goodbye. If this video helped you, then give it a like, and if you want to see more, subscribe, and if you want to support me, go to patreon.com/wehavecookies56.